I was the one who said it. Not some officer in a briefing room, not a staff sergeant with a grudge. Me, Marcus Del Rey, CSR team pararescueman, 8 years in the business of going after people the war had lost. I stood at that map board on night 3, looked at the red blinking dot that had gone still for the last 11 hours, and I said it out loud, "Write her off. She's not coming back." I was wrong. I am going to carry that sentence for the rest of my life. Her name on the flight roster was Captain Nadia Voss, though nobody called her that. She had been Lazarus since her second deployment, a name the unit intelligence officer gave her after she walked away from a hard landing in the Bikar that should have finished her. She wore it the way she wore her call sign patch, without ceremony, without comment. If you asked her about it, she'd shrug and say the ground was softer than the intel predicted. That was Nadia, dry, precise, and completely unbothered by what had already tried to kill her. She flew ATANs the way surgeons work, quiet, methodical, without wasted motion. 3 deployments, 41 combat sorties, 2 distinguished flying crosses gathering dust in a footlocker she never opened for visitors. What I knew about her before the mission was this: she did not flinch and she did not hurry. That was it. I had not thought much more about her than that. The night she went down started the way bad nights usually do, with an alert that felt routine until it wasn't. A coalition convoy had run into an ambush 6 kilometers past Firebase Kestrel, in the spine of jungle ridgelines they called the Ridgeback on account of how the terrain hunched up in sharp folds from north to south. 2 vehicles burning, a casualty count that was rising, and the ground element calling for close air support that was already 18 minutes out when the first call came in. Nadia was in the air before the tasking order cleared the operations desk. She was already on station when they asked for a bird, already low and reading the terrain the way she always did, below the ridgelines, in the noise, where the anti-air couldn't get a clean lock. I was monitoring the net from the CSR ready room when her voice came through, even and matter-of-fact, calling contact on a gun position in the second draw south of the convoy. 2 passes. The gun position went quiet. She was setting up for a third when the net lit up with a sound I still hear sometimes, the high crack of the shoulder-fired missile system the enemy had moved in from the east, the system nobody's ISR had flagged, followed 20 seconds later by Nadia's voice saying, flat as a weather report, "I'm hit. I'm going down east of Ridgeback. Call sign Lazarus going feet dry." Then static. We launched a search package inside 4 minutes. 2 Pave Hawks, 4 of us on the rescue teams, a flight of Apaches for cover. The locator beacon came up strong for the first 90 minutes, close to the crash site, moving slowly south, which meant she was alive and evading. Then it jumped, went dark for 6 hours, came back up 8 kilometers further south, then dark again. On night 2 the beacon went completely silent. The intelligence assessment said the enemy had likely captured or killed her. The weather moved in over the ridgeback, low cloud, intermittent rain, the kind of visibility that grounds rotary wing without a waver. We made 3 penetration attempts. The third got us shot at from both ridgelines, and we pulled back with a hole in the Pave Hawk's tail section and one of my teammates holding his shoulder in the cargo bay. Command extended the search window by 24 hours, then another 24. Then the language in the briefing started to change, assets permitting, weather window dependent, diminishing probability of survivor recovery. I knew what those phrases meant. I had used them myself on other searches when the math stopped working in our favor. On night 3, standing at that map board with the red dot frozen and the rain hammering the hangar roof, I said it. Write her off. She's not coming back. Garrett Hines, my team lead, didn't argue. He just pulled the planning overlay off the board and filed it in the hold stack. We moved on to the next tasking. 6 days after Nadia Voss went down in the Ridgeback, a dirt-caked figure walked out of the jungle at the wire of Firebase Kestrel's southern checkpoint. 2 Marines on guard later reported that she came out of the tree line at now 4:12, moving slowly but upright, one arm tucked close to her ribs, her flight suit in ribbons from the knees down. She had no radio. She had no survival gear beyond what she'd carried out of the cockpit in the first 4 minutes after the crash. She had a fixed-blade knife, a signal mirror, and a folded piece of terrain paper she'd torn from a kneeboard map before the aircraft fully came apart on impact. She had walked 43 miles through denied jungle, mostly at night, moving on streams to break her footprint, sleeping in the high canopy during daylight, navigating by the stars on the 3 nights the cloud broke enough to show them. She had fractured 2 ribs in the ejection. She had set her own dislocated left shoulder against a tree trunk on day 2. She had bypassed 2 enemy patrol routes she'd mapped in her head from the air, and on day 4 she had walked directly through a gap in a cordon the enemy had thrown up to catch her, a gap she had intuited from the pattern of their noise discipline, because she had been listening to how they moved for 72 hours. She did not stop at the checkpoint longer than it took them to confirm her identity and call it up the net. I was in the operations center when the call came through. The duty officer read it twice before he put it on the overhead speaker. Lazarus, Firebase Kestrel, ETA, to Ops Center approximately 90 minutes by vehicle. Nobody spoke. That room had 8 people in it, including Garrett Hines, who had pulled her planning overlay off the board 3 days earlier. I watched him stand very still with a coffee mug in his hand, and I watched the color shift in his face, and I thought about the sentence I had said out loud at that map board, and what it had cost me to say it, and what it had cost her nothing at all, because she had not been there to hear it. She came through the ops center door as 0604, ribs wrapped, left arm in a field sling, hair pulled back tight, the folded terrain paper in her breast pocket. She walked to the mission planning table, unfolded the terrain paper on top of the current strike package, and without sitting down, without asking permission, said to the mission commander, "I know where their forward command node is. I was 400 meters from it on day 5. Give me 6 hours of sleep and I'll fly the lead element in." The mission commander looked at her for a long moment, then he nodded. She flew the strike 48 hours later, lead aircraft, first on target. The enemy's forward command node came apart in 4 passes. The after-action put her on station for 22 minutes, 6 confirmed positions suppressed. The cordon that had spent 6 days looking for her broken apart from the air by the same woman it had failed to catch on the ground. Every pilot in the package came off target on her call. Nobody questioned the timing. Nobody questioned the authority. When she taxied in and climbed down from the cockpit, Garrett Hines was standing at the edge of the tarmac. He had driven himself out there without being told. I know because I was 2 steps behind him, and neither of us had spoken on the drive over. She walked toward us the way she walked everywhere, measured, no wasted motion. When she was close enough, Garrett came to attention. Not a half-hearted attention. Full stop, shoulders back, chin level, the posture a man holds when the moment is too heavy for anything less. He held it there in the dark with the engine noise dying around them. She stopped in front of him. She looked at him for a moment. She nodded once, not the nod of someone accepting a surrender, but the nod of someone who understood that a debt had been acknowledged and was now set aside. Then she walked past him toward the debrief tent. I never told her what I said at the map board on night 3. I don't know that I needed to. The word she had sent back through the wire, without knowing it, was already written on 43 miles of jungle and 6 days of cold dark, and a fractured ribcage she had run on until the math came out the other way. Garrett came to her defense 3 weeks later, in a review board that questioned whether a pilot with unverified field injury should have been cleared for combat tasking so quickly after recovery. He spoke for 11 minutes. He did not raise his voice. He laid out what she had done, mile by mile, decision by decision, from the ridgeback to the wire, and then he said she most prepared officer he had encountered in 18 years of service, and that the board would be making a serious error in judgment if they confused her willingness to get back in the aircraft with recklessness. The board cleared her without condition. I still think about that moment at the map board sometimes. The red dot gone still, the rain on the roof, the planning overlay coming down. The particular confidence it takes to tell yourself that the worst has happened and move on. She did not move on. She moved south. 43 miles, 6 nights, 2 broken ribs, 1 dislocated shoulder, and a piece of terrain paper folded in her breast pocket with a target already marked. That is the only sentence I have told myself since. Any time I am tempted to say something is finished before it is actually finished.